I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Arianna Huffington's on the show today. Huffington as in the Huffington Post. Yes, that one. She is the co-founder of the Huffington Post. And she's also been voted one of the most powerful and influential women in the world by Forbes. She's a speaker, an entrepreneur, an author, I think has 12 or 14 books. Incredible. And we talk about her why not now moments, one of which came right after she collapsed, literally from exhaustion. And it was a huge shift that happened in her life after that. And then also recently, she has stepped down from the Huffington Post. And can you imagine what an experience and process that was? That why not now moment that she described was a big one. I mean, her last name is in the company. So she talks through what that was like. We also talk about sleep. Her most recent book is called Sleep Revolution. Something really close to my heart is sleep and my respect for sleep that I've gained over the years. And then also what I thought was really cool is her view on Silicon Valley and the kind of macho bro culture that Silicon Valley has and how she feels it needs to change. Arianna is a board member of Uber and also just obviously really well known and respected among corporate leadership. And so her opinion and voice is definitely something to listen to. She talks through how she thinks that kind of macho culture can change. And a lot of it revolves around how we tend to glorify the always-on culture and that exhaustion and burnout is kind of a sign of success, which the data shows it's not. So she has a really interesting argument for that. It's backed by science. So here's Arianna. Before we hop in, as you know, each episode I ask guests how they keep their mind healthy. Meditation is by far the most common response. We have people like Tony Robbins talking about standing guard to our mind and being super intentional about what we allow into our mind. And we have all of these other wildly successful and inspiring people talking about meditation. Most of you know that I'm a big Headspace fan. And if you're new to the show, just as some background, I started using the Headspace app about a year ago, and it's been the single best thing I've ever done for myself. Here's the thing though, sometimes meditation and mindfulness is not what we imagine. Yes, there are days when I feel like I'm in a Zen situation, and other days I've been known to hit the SOS button. There's literally an SOS button on the Headspace app. So there have been times where I've removed myself from certain situations and gone somewhere to push this button. One time I even escaped my car. So this quick 3-minute mind saver has kept me from falling down that rabbit hole in some way. Or even saying things I didn't mean, maybe texting or emailing something to someone that I didn't mean. It's like taking a breath of fresh air, and it just allows me to reset. And as Jimmy Fallon, who uses the app, has even said, it's great. This British guy comes on, tells me it's going to be all right. In fact, the British guy, Andy, who's been on the podcast, comes on and says this when you hit the SOS button.
Okay, so you've hit the SOS button. So there's a pretty good chance you're feeling pretty stressed right now. So to begin with, I'd just like you to find a place where you can sit down just for 2 or 3 minutes, completely undisturbed.
So maybe you already meditate, maybe not, but you want to start. Regardless of the case, let's be real. Most of us don't have a Zen sanctuary with a fluffy pillow, mood lighting to retreat to when we're about to lose it. So now you can literally have an SOS button that you push. It's a 3-minute pause thanks to Headspace. There hasn't been a time when I've hit that button and it hasn't made me feel better. Hello, Arianna. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. How are you doing today?
Very good. Good to be with you.
Good. Well, thank you for coming on. And I consider you an expert professional why notter. So we'll hop right in. And can you share a time when you had to ask yourself that question, why not now? And we'll talk it through a bit and zoom in on it.
Fantastic. So back in April 2007, I collapsed from exhaustion, sleep deprivation, burnout. And as I came to in a pool of blood and had to deal with a broken cheekbone and a deep look at how I was living my life, I had to ask myself the question, why not now in terms of changing my life? Why not now? Why not now changing the way I deprioritize sleep and recharging and thought being always on was the way to achieve what I wanted to achieve? Why not now looking at all the latest science about how much more effective and productive and healthier we are when we take time to recharge? And why not now take it beyond my own life and help others? All the sort of millions who are, like me, deluded about the way to live and succeed.
We'll get to Thrive in a moment because I read the book right when it came out in 2014, and I was in a similar spot, and it really helped me. And you are helping millions of people. Back to that moment, the why not now moment, was it right after you collapsed that you truly realized something had to change and that this happened because of exhaustion? Or did it take a little bit of time to process that?
It was pretty immediate in an intuitive way. It took time to process it because I'm a kind of a data-driven person, collect the data, the latest science, see how much of an epidemic burnout had become. But there was sort of an intuitive knowing from the moment I collapsed. And that's kind of what is so fascinating, how often we know, and then our brain has to figure out exactly what we know and what it means.
Exactly. And then you had probably another why not now moment of why not share your story as an example of how people can take this as an indicator or as a sign that they might want to evaluate their own health and well-being. Was that an immediate decision of I'm going to share my story and hopefully encourage others, or did that take some time? What did that moment look like?
That wasn't an immediate at all decision at all. And the reason it wasn't an immediate decision is because I had promised myself I would not write another book. Running the Huffington Post was pretty intense. And I had really told everybody who loved me and cared about me not overburdening myself with deadlines and commitments that this is it, no more books. And so I knew that if I wanted to get the word out, putting it all in a book was the most efficient way to do it. So I had to overcome that promise and that resistance. And then, of course, writing the book was an incredible exercise in solidifying all the learnings and putting together all the science and the literature and the ancient wisdom. So It turned out to be the first book I wrote, my 14th book, which actually was not done with the same kind of stress that all my other books entailed. Also, it made me, when the book debuted at #1 in the New York Times list in its first week, it made me realize in a very immediate way how much the world was ready to change, how there was something in the culture, there was something in the zeitgeist that meant that millions of people in different ways were becoming aware of the delusional way we're living our lives, accepting burnout as the necessary price of success.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was flipping through my copy of Thrive earlier, seeing what I had circled and the notes I had written in the margins when I read it, and there are many. One of which was noting when you quoted David Brooks, and he said, eulogies aren't resumes. They describe the person's care, wisdom, truthfulness, and courage. They describe the million little moral judgments that emanate from the inner region. And that really struck me because, we tend to look at our LinkedIn profiles and think that that is our being and that is our worth, right? And it's a great way to kind of snap into a different frame of mind.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think, in fact, as I write in Thrive, recognizing that death is an inevitable part of life brings perspective to everything. And philosophers, whether it was the Greeks or the Romans, often urged people to, as Socrates put it, remember death. Or as the Romans put it, memento mori, remember death. They would literally carve memento mori, on trees and statues, not out of morbidity, but because nothing gives perspective to life more than the constant reminder that who we are, the personality, the body, is not eternal.
Absolutely. You've backed up so many of your opinions with facts and science about sleep, about wellness, and looking at company culture. There's even a study that estimated the loss of performance due to insomnia cost businesses about $63 million per year in total. And when we look at culture and we look at, in general, some of the shifts that are happening, what do you think is the proper way for companies to incentivize more sleep? I know we've seen, like with Salesforce and a few other companies that are actually adding mechanisms into their model of encouraging sleep. Have you seen any best practices, or what's kind of the latest and greatest?
Oh, absolutely. The most important practice is creating a transition to sleep, making sure that as we do with our babies, when we read them Good Night Moon, we give them a bath, we sing them a lullaby, older people too need a transition. And the transition has to start with turning off all our devices and gently escorting them out of the bedroom. That is key, because our phones are the repository of every challenge, every obstacle, everything we're working on in our daily lives, and we need to have a clear demarcation line. So my transition period is half an hour. When I have a hot bath, I read the book in bed. But even if your transition period is 5 minutes, you need a transition period. And I have actually recorded for Audible a parody of Good Night Moon called Good Night Smartphone that I highly recommend, because our phones are often the thing that makes it hardest for us to not just fall asleep, but stay asleep.
Wonderful. And kind of taking that theme of, well, I guess this is a company culture question in a way. You've recently said that the work culture in Silicon Valley needs to change. What do you mean by that, and how do you think it can change?
I think it can change when we realize that the macho notion that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to burn out, you have to be always on, is recognized as being unscientific. Silicon Valley claims to be data-driven. Well, this is not data-driven. This is delusional. This is like believing that smoking is cool and glamorous, as we believed up to the 60s when you had doctors advertising cigarettes in white coats. So once people really recognize the delusion of that, the next step is to create boundaries to our relationship with technology, because it's very hard to practice living a life where recharging and purpose and meaning and all that makes life worth living is part of how we spend our time. It's very hard to do all that if we allow our addiction to technology to dominate our lives.
And given that Silicon Valley is the heart of technology, I assume that is kind of where it starts, that macho notion that you've talked about. You see a correlation between that and technology?
Well, I think the macho notion means celebrating being always on. Very quickly responding to texts and messages, and being constantly plugged into notifications. And we know that that is not a very productive and creative way to live, because our productivity and our creativity require connecting with a deeper part of ourselves and not being constantly distracted and interrupted.
Makes sense. And switching gears once again, in 2005, when you launched Huffington Post, you had the progressive vision of building a platform to really empower and encourage citizen journalism. And we fast forward, we're in the middle of another media paradigm shift. What do you consider progressive thinking to be right now in this current media and journalism climate?
Right now, the most important thing, actually, something which was very important at the Huffington Post from the beginning, and this is not to see the world in right-left terms. That's a very obsolete way to look at the world. A lot of the major problems of our time, like growing inequalities, are seen as big societal problems by people on the right and on the left, because they are both critical to having a compassionate society and critical to stability that conservatives care about. So I think when we move beyond this way of looking at everything as right or left, we'll be much more likely to come up with solutions.
And how do you keep your mind healthy, Arianna?
Well, for me, it's my rituals of meditation, sleep, dealing with the obnoxious roommate in my head that is the voice we all have that doubts and judges us. And it's the recognition that I'm a work in progress, and that one phrase that I love is recognizing that the issue is not the issue, but how I deal with the issue. So every day gives me opportunities to see how I deal with obstacles and challenges and whatever issues life throws my way.
And when we look at the future, you've just launched Thrive Global, and you clearly have the why not now mindset. Is there anything that's rolling around in the back of your mind that you're thinking, why not now? And maybe that's personal, maybe it's professional. Could be anything.
Well, actually, my last big why not now was why not leave the Huffington Post, which I love like a third child, and launch a new company, Thrive Global, to help change the way we work and live, both through our work with corporations and our work with media, through our media platform, through our trainings with corporations, through our e-commerce. That was a big why not now.
Absolutely.
And it was a very hard decision to make, but something which I feel so grateful to myself that I took a deep breath and jumped, because I have loved building this company and having an impact in the way we work and live.
And did it come down to a moment where, I'm sure it's been brewing and you've been considering this for a long time, and Thrive is definitely in the in the progression line of where you've been headed. But was there a moment where you knew, where something happened and it was an indicator of, yep, this is the time to make this change and leave Huffington Post and start something new?
I think it was the fact that as I was raising the Series A for Thrive Global, and at first I thought I could do it with 20% of my time and run the Huffington Post with 80% of my time, I realized that that's not really what was going to work, that I had to be involved in Thrive 100% if it was going to work. And so it was a decision that I couldn't divide myself. I had to pick.
That's such great advice. It's, I think, something that we all do, and we try to bucket our time into these percentages of certain things, and sometimes the reality is much different than what we would like for those percentages to be. So that focus, very, very important. And a couple of rapid fire questions for you. What are you reading right now? And what's your all-time favorite book?
So I'm reading a book called Irresistible about our addiction to technology. And it's really amazing to see all the data and all the science behind how addictive our different social media networks are deliberately and by design. How likes are there to feed our longing for approval, and how immediately we feel we have to respond to everything. So it's just incredibly revealing, both about why this is a feature of the social media system, not a bug, and also how essential it is that we set boundaries.
Absolutely. And all-time favorite book?
All-time favorite book is a book by my nightstand, which is a book by Marcus Aurelius called Meditations. He was a Stoic philosopher and the Emperor of Rome, and he was able to deal with invasions and the plague and betrayals while maintaining his equanimity.
What keeps you up at night? So much discussion around sleep. Is there anything that keeps you up?
Actually, not, because I really feel that when we have a transition to sleep, we can deal with whatever it is that we're anxious about or worried about before we go to sleep. And if there is one thing that I have a hard time getting rid of in terms of anxieties or worries, it has to do with my two daughters. I'm still working on it, but I have to admit that that's something which is the hardest thing for me to deal with.
And just one final question. Any advice for your younger self?
Oh, yes. The advice for my younger self is definitely to stop worrying so much and trust life, and to treat life more as a dance between making it happen and letting it happen, and not thinking that we have to make absolutely everything in our lives happen, because so often some of the best things that happen in our lives are things that come to us and we are open to them rather than things that we create.
Wonderful point to end on there. Thank you for your time, Arianna. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care. I love that idea of the dance, of kind of letting things happen and making them happen. If you've been listening to prior episodes, you know that's kind of one of my biggest goals in life, is to figure out when to let things happen and when to make things happen. So this notion of a dance and kind of a give and take, I can thank Arianna for that. And sleep. I used to think that we could bank sleep, sleep on the weekends and then you catch up and you just go hard during the week. And I was averaging 4 or 5 hours a night for a while there, and traveling a ton, different time zones. And looking back now, the decisions I would make, my personality and state of mind was definitely not in the best place. So I've definitely been forced to respect this notion of sleep, and now I'm pretty militant about getting 8 hours. I track my sleep, and I'm scared not to get 8 hours. Basically, that's what it's come down to. So a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, we have an exciting new component of the Why Not Now show. I've started a hotline. So I have all these people that reach out and share their Why Not Now stories over social media and email, and now you have a phone number if you want to call. And I've borrowed this from the Missing Richard Simmons show because they had a hotline, and I was thinking, brilliant. We can do this, and then I can just listen to the Why Not Now stories and maybe share some of them on the show. So if you leave a voicemail, then you need to know that it's possible your story will be heard and shared. We will not share your full name, of course. And the number is 929-399-6833. That is the Why Not Now hotline. So call, share your stories. If you want to share anything else, feel free. I can't promise we'll get back to every one of you, but it's very likely that your story will be shared and we can inspire other people. So that's exciting. Second thing, the Shelfie Club. Revamping it last week. If you're following me on social media, you might have seen we did a live Shelfie Club meetup. This was very impromptu and live on Instagram. We all kind of gathered. There was someone in there from Saudi Arabia. There were friends of mine from grade school, and we were talking about books. So that was pretty fun. We'll continue to do that. So make sure you're following along if you want in. And what I'm reading right now, or what I read over the weekend, I guess I'd say read, it was more listen. I listened to Essentialism on Audible, and it was really good. So I kind of cheated though. I listened to it at the speed of 1.5, so the rate is 1.5, just to get through to see if I really wanted to buy a hard copy, and I did. It was recommended to me by my friend Lauren and by several people online. It was recommended in this Shelfie Club meetup several times. And if I hear about a book 2 or 3 times in a row, I usually buy it. It's like a sign for me to go ahead and invest in it. And Essentialism is all about doing less instead of more, and the power of choice, and saying no, but also focusing on what really matters and what really drives you. We'll dig into Essentialism a little bit more probably next week, but if you're up for it, listen to it or read it, and then you'll be on board with us. There are quite a few people who are reading it right now, and it's not a brand new book, but it is definitely good. And there's several things that, like dealing with FOMO. I have FOMO personally and professionally. And having a way to kind of reverse pilot that was one of my takeaways. Another thing was delineating between a relationship and your decision to say no to someone. So just because you say no doesn't mean that you are neglecting that relationship necessarily, but you make a divide in that decision and know the difference between the two. I could go on, but I will resist and save that for next time. Reminder that for all the books that these guests that have been on the podcast have recommended, they can be found if you go to amyjomartin.com/Why Not Now. Just click on the picture of the person, whether it's Mark Cuban, Simon Sinek, Tony Robbins, Arianna Huffington, you name it. You click on their photo and you scroll down and you'll see what they're reading right now, as well as their all-time favorite book. And I'm repurposing that over onto the Shelfie Club page as well. So heads up on that. Keep me posted on what you're reading. #Shelfie Club. And as a reminder, that's so we can take photos of our books on our shelves. And you can be in it too if you want it to be a selfie. But the idea is to really kind of amp up our value of our content online by talking about books and having those meaningful conversations. So that is a quick snippet of a few things going on. You can call the hotline, 929-399-6833. Leave me a voicemail. And it's all about sharing your stories so we can learn from them. Okay, so sticking to the theme of self-care, I brought Richard Brewer back on the show. We'll do a quick chat because we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of us not having anything to drink. And first of all, welcome back, Richard.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's good to have you. So a year, can you believe this? Do you remember how it all started? We kind of fell into this experiment. It was very unintentional.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we'll get into the kind of background of it, but I think it started from, I mean, an April Fool's Day will be 12 months, which is kind of ironic, really. But we had a work date with a couple of friends. We were at a bar down the road kind of thing with our laptops, and one beer turns into 2 beers, which turns into 6 beers and all that stuff. But it wasn't so much that, it wasn't a particular night. I think it was just a cumulative of many of those types of experiences.
Yeah, it was that specific night. So it was what? It was March 31st, I guess. It wasn't a big night, but it was enough to wake up and be like, oh, you know what? Maybe we should give this a break for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, it was a lot of those kind of feelings, those kind of mornings, which kind of led to this decision. And we tried in the past. We definitely tried before to like, okay, 30 days, let's not have a drink, or 2 weeks, let's see how we go, or whatever, and put deadlines on it. But this time was more, I think, out of sort of fatigue and a genuine kind of desire to not want to wake up feeling like that anymore.
Yeah, so just maybe a little bit of a hangover, but for me, I know it was years in the making. I mean, attending Arizona State University, the #1 party school in America, and then living in Vegas and kind of living this entrepreneurial lifestyle and very little sleep combined with alcohol as more of just a constant. It was not a good look at times, but this situation was more of just okay, let's pause. And I think it has stuck more because we haven't intentionally tried to like set a time period of how long we're not going to drink.
For sure. And I think that's really the main takeaway, certainly for me, I think, aside from the clarity of mind and all those sort of positive benefits that come with not putting certain toxins in your body, it was just a proof that if you do take the approach of little and often, or one small thing daily, then it can be 12 months down the road and you've made significant changes. So everything has to start somewhere. Taking that why not now approach, whether it be drinking or eating the wrong things or exercise or whatever it might be, it's not, and deadlines may work for you, which is awesome if they do, but certainly in our case, they don't. And this is sort of proof that there's another method and there's a way to kind of avoid the frustration of continually walking that timed path of deadlines and full stops and things like that. Whereas this is just like, it's open-ended. You make a small change every day, change for the better. And then eventually, the proof is in the pudding, and 12 months down the road, and certainly we're a lot better for it. And I think if you take that approach, you're giving yourself more chance and setting yourself up for sort of more success, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of laugh because it would become, 3 months, 6 months, and we'd almost forget. We're like, oh yeah, wow, it hasn't felt that long, but geez, it's been 6 months since we've, even had a cocktail. And so before you know it, I think the upside became so great that we didn't even really kind of think about it. But there have been a couple of times, and I'm curious to know yours, Richard, or at least for you to share, because I think the one time where I truly thought about this, and maybe it was early on, is I was upgraded to first class on a flight. And this doesn't happen all the time. So it's kind of a big deal. You're sitting in your comfy big seat and they offer you a free glass of alcohol, a glass, not a plastic glass. And I just remember that time thinking, oh, this is just one of those moments where I, in the past, would have, of course, kind of reveled in this moment, but comes, it goes, and that was kind of it. But it really hasn't been that difficult at all.
No, there hasn't really been a lot of times for me where, there's certain feelings that, and thankfully you can get non-alcoholic beer and things like that do sort of quench your thirst, and generally it's that one beer or that taste of the one refreshment that kind of, is enough, which is great. But I think the biggest test was last October. I went to Orlando for touch rugby nationals with a team from San Diego that I was in, a great bunch of guys. Lots of fun to be around, and they're rugby guys too, so they enjoy a drink and enjoy a good drink.
Does that mean a lot when you say a good drink?
Yeah, it's a prime part of the weekend kind of thing, and certainly to their credit, like all of us were able to play well, and we actually won the national championship. But that aside, the afternoons and the nights are pretty much filled with drinking and that camaraderie and things like that. And especially after winning, you're in a position where it's like, God, I'd love to have a few beers and celebrate. But what was cool is that I was actually, I was still able to be a part of that celebration. I actually was the kind of designated driver for the night, which was super helpful for everybody. It means everyone can get around, and we all had a great time. And so that was really the only test. But after, the first few times of people asking me to have a drink and that kind of peer pressure, they got what I was doing, and they kind of let me be and just let me be a part of it. So,
which is cool. I've noticed that a lot too, where in fact, I've come across a lot of people who are in similar spots. It was just recently brought to my awareness that there's something called teetotaling that is not a new thing at all. It's like 100 years old type of concept where you just decide not to drink. It's not necessarily, alcoholism or anything like that. It's just making the conscious kind of decision to not drink. But yes, do you think you'll ever drink again, Richard?
I don't think that's an important question, to be honest. I think it's more about how we're feeling. And as I say, in any kind of situation, whether it's weight loss or drinking or whatever, not to take away the seriousness of those sort of bigger problems as well. But no, maybe. But at the moment, I don't have a kind of need for it. I'm enjoying, waking up in the morning I have maybe an unhealthy dependency on like chocolate chip cookies now, but apart.
That's not new.
No, I guess
maybe
not.
You just amplify.
It's an excuse. But no, I don't think that's an important question. I think it's more of like, how am I feeling? How are we feeling about it?
Yeah, the clarity for me has been a biggie. I think so often I would, wind down with a glass of wine or just replace a glass of wine or a drink for feeling certain things, which is so common. We all do it. Or just experiencing certain things. And I notice that I'm just feeling things more, and then you feel them and you let them go, or you process, or you deal with them. So that's cool. And then just more time in my day. I mean, I would get so tired after just even having one drink that is kind of worthless in terms of being motivated, even if it was just even a half a glass of wine. So that's been big. And yeah, so little by little, it makes me wonder what else we could do, what other changes. Yeah,
for the moment, it's a big one, and I agree in terms of clarity of mind, and this isn't the solution to life's problems either. It's one thing, certainly from my perspective, it's made the ability to make more important life decisions a little, or approach them in a more productive way. It's proactive versus reactive, and my sort of brain, when it's muddy now, it's like not as muddy with the way sort of alcohol may have played a part in that. So this isn't, as I say, a solution to all of life's issues, but it has helped me personally to be able to make stronger decisions, I think. So that's definitely a takeaway.
It's a little less drama, I'd say, too. Mm-hmm. Sprinkled in our world.
And I can't imagine how Ruby would put up with us as drunk humans either. That's our puppy. She's never seen us in that state. I actually don't think we'd be able to.
We're already kind of crazy.
And so she actually.
Yeah.
And you know what they say about pets taking after their owners a little bit. And so if you dial that wacky up to 11, I hate to see how she would turn out.
Yeah. There you have it. Thanks for letting us share our story. And if you have other stories or examples of using Why Not Now as a way to break habits or change habits, add something, subtract something in your life, then let me know, because we'll share it and spread the wealth. I want to hear what your Why Not Now is. Please share it with me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at Amy Jo Martin. I'll send a signed copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Renegades Write the Rules, to the first 200 people who listen, rate, and leave an honest review of the podcast in iTunes. And you'll also get a free month subscription from our friends at Headspace. This is only available to Why Not Now listeners. Once you've left a rating and review on iTunes, just email your iTunes handle name and your mailing address to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com, and we'll get your package in the mail to you. For detailed show notes, head to amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. That's where you'll find links to things we discussed on the show, special offers, and how you can keep in touch with guests. Hat tip to my buddies Ash and Devin at Rock Salt Music for our tunes today. You just listened to the talented John Coggins in Let's Go and Let It Ride. And a jump high five to my talented husband, Richard Greer, for producing the show and being patient with me. See you next time. Until then, why not now?